Sideline Stories with Cody Allison, the first sideline reporter of Titans Radio. I'm Rhett Bryan. That is Cody Allison. Cody, we are super excited to start this project. You and I have been friends for a long time.
Long time.
And I'm excited to share the stories from your perspective that you've never really shared publicly.
Well,
That's
really,
what's
our
wild.
stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
we were there together.
So we're going to discover and talk about the stories of the early days of pro football in the Mid-South, and in particular, the early days of the Tennessee Titans in Nashville and the Mid-South. So this will be fun.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's start with, we're calling this episode Becoming Cody. And
Wow.
yes.
It sounds important.
Yeah, well, it is.
I think we need to change that just to Cody sitting on a couch. I mean.
But we got to tell the history before we set up all these great sideline stories. So I want to go back to a place in time because before you ever got involved with Titans Radio, you have an incredible story when you were at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, before you went to law school. And I want you to share with us how Mike Keith got you out of exams to drive all night for a very piece of important history and information as it pertains to sports in the state of Tennessee.
Yes, the Peyton Manning story.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So, I started working with Mike at the beginning of my junior year. So here I am, a senior, trying to actually graduate. And I had two final exams the next morning. So, I stay up late to study because, of course, I'm cramming, right? And so I get a call from Mike at like 4 a.m. And his first words were, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
I'm asleep. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, you got me on the phone,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm talking to you. And he says, all right, I need you to be outside your apartment in about 15 minutes. I said, for what? He said, you've got to go somewhere. You have no choice. Just be outside. And, of course, this is Mike. He's my boss. I'm like, okay, Mike, I have two final exams today. My dad's going to kill me if I don't show up for those. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll get it fixed later. I need you to do something for the University of Tennessee. And I'm just so confused.
Well, it's cryptic because you're
Right.
like, okay, it's the middle of the night.
Right.
I'm blowing off two exams.
Yes.
And you're just telling me just blindly follow, just do what I say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so, Mike, like the voice of God on the phone, like, get out front. I'm like, okay. And so I said, where am I going? Right. The obvious question. He said, I can't tell you. I was like, it's this top secret. He said, just get out there. I said, okay.
At this point, are you thinking, well, it's Mike, so it's probably not, but is there something illegal going on?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
what am I doing?
Mike's a clean egg, but I was like, I don't know what's going on. I just know my dad's going to kill me. I'm going to ruin my GPA, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I get out. So Ed Rupp, the traffic tracker guy, because that's how you used to get the traffic reports, right?
course.
Some guy driving around. So Ed Rupp shows up, picks me up, and he says, you're going to the airport. I said, where am I actually going to end up? He said, New Orleans. He said, we've just found out Peyton Manning's going to sign with the University of Tennessee. Nobody else knows. I think it came from Bobby Denton, who would know. He was the general manager of WIVK
Yeah.
and, of course, the voice in Neyland Stadium.
Right.
And so I said, oh, my gosh. He said, here's $300 cash, and here's Bobby Denton's credit card, which I'm sure I could have bought anything with that. It was, the gold, platinum, whatever.
Sure.
And so he said, here's your plane tickets. Here's your equipment. Again, pre-TSA. Get on the flight. Just get there and call Mike when you land. And so I've got like some cricket phone, I don't even think I was flip phone at that point. Like calling from a pay phone outside the Circle K or something. And basically says, go cover this. And I actually end up running into a guy who was with the big sports station down there. He said, where are you trying to go? I said, I'm trying to go to he said, oh my gosh, I'm there. So I end up going over to the hotel where they had the press conference. Get to interview Peyton, Archie, Olivia,
Nice.
who is great. That's the mom, of course. Eli was not there. Cooper was not there.
Or
I
as
don't
they say,
remember.
cupper.
Cupper, that's right. And so we did all this, and the guy from the local station, I'm like, I've now got to get over to the station because they'd made arrangements for me to be on Mike's show, Sports Talk, from New Orleans and do this whole thing with all the interviews.
I guess
And
through an ISDN link.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I going to get there? And this guy says, I'll give you a ride. I just crazy.
Wow.
So I get a ride over there, and we go on, do this show. It's great. I get back, and by the time I get back to I have to say this, the flight going back got delayed. They canceled it ultimately. And there was the running backs coach from the University of Michigan was there, kind of like a last-ditch effort. I didn't even really know Michigan was involved in this, but he was there at the last minute just to say, hey, Michigan still wants you. So I ended up hanging out, going out to dinner with him that night. We talk about all this stuff today, how crazy it was, and then get on a flight the next day, get back to my apartment, and on the old answering machine, have messages from two different professors that say, don't worry about your exams, you can make them up. So all of Knoxville was listening to this, and I'm like, this is great. So that's how that went down.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, this is why this podcast, Sideline Stories, is going to be so good because nobody knows that story publicly. And for you to be boots on the ground for one of the most important recruits in the history of the University of Tennessee football program, that's amazing.
If they'd told me 2 days before I was going to do this, I would have totally screwed the whole thing up. I'd have been thinking about it. I had no time to think.
And that's why it worked.
Yeah.
And the other, obviously, for top-notch secrecy, like no one needs to know about this.
Right.
Because you'd have had 48 hours, and you'd have been dying to tell somebody and slipped and said,
Right.
to the guy at the Circle K, where I'm going to the interview?
Well, and we were the only presence from Knoxville. They didn't want the word to get out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you've got your competing
Correct.
stations, TV
Correct.
and radio, showing up. So,
Wow.
I don't know.
All right, so let's go back to, because you and I both were on the Tennessee Oilers radio network before they became the Titans, before it became Titans Radio. How did you become the spotter for the Oilers network in 1998? Because that's the first time I'd met you, and that's the first time we kind of started working together.
Right.
How did that come about?
You were there in 97, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, I'm in law school in Mississippi, getting ready to start my third year, final year. And Mike calls me up and he says, hey, what are you doing every weekend? I'm like, well, I'm trying to graduate.
That's the bar.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. Yes, I've kind of sunk a lot of time and money into this.
Right. It's kind of important.
I need to finish it off. He goes, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. The Oilers radio network needs a spotter for the play-by-play announcer, Joe McConnell. We'll get back to him in just a minute. Great Joe stories. And so I said, okay, how am I going to pull aside? He's like, you'll have to drive here on Friday. I'm like, I've got class. That's a problem. And then basically you'll be here for the weekend, whether we travel or we're in town, and then you can go back Sunday. And as it turns out, they had somebody set up to do this, but his girlfriend's, this is how I remember it. Larry knows the story well, Larry Stone. His girlfriend's dog, again, I'm sorry about this, became blind or something like that. He had to stay and take care of the dog.
Wow.
And just decided that he couldn't do this and he couldn't
He was caring
work
for his
with
pet.
NFL team, caring for this dog. But so then that's how I got the opportunity. I talked to a couple law professors and said, hey, I got a chance to do this. And they never would do this, but they let me record my lectures because most of the time, go to lectures all week, study all weekend, and make sure you get it down. And so they allowed me to record those, which you weren't supposed to do. And then I listened driving back and forth from Mississippi to Nashville on the weekends. And that's how I graduated and was able to do the Tennessee Oilers.
Were they on cassette tape?
They were.
Wow.
Yeah.
The old cassette deck.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's what's crazy is just how things are sometimes happen chance and sometimes they're just not. So like you just never know. All right, so you brought up Mike Keith a couple times. We both have. You were on the field at Nissan Stadium for the induction of Mike into the Titans Ring of Honor. From your perspective, because you were in the suite with him and you were down on the field with all of our buddies, radio buddies, and Mike's family, what was your perspective like that, seeing our friend get it, one of the highest honors you can get from a National Football League franchise?
Yeah. I was just blown away, first of all, that he asked me to show up.
Well, why wouldn't he?
Well, you know.
Because he called you and said, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you going to be doing on
What are you going to be doing on Sunday? And then he told me, you know, I knew he was getting inducted,
Right.
of course. But then he told me, and I said, well, whatever I'm doing, I'm not doing anymore. I'm doing that. I'm going to be there. And it was just surreal. I mean, just seeing Mike in the booth, he was just so happy. You know, it wasn't a good day for the Titans. I don't know that anybody in the suite knew what the score was.
Well,
we were just so happy to see each other.
Yeah, and y'all were, you know, some of those people in that suite you hadn't seen in a long time, like Mike's mom.
Yeah.
Janet, you hadn't seen her in a long time.
Hadn't seen her in a long time. Michelle, his wife.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. His daughter, Abby.
I wished I could have been down there. Obviously, had some other things going on. But from my perspective upstairs in booth 7, it was awesome. And Coach Mack and I both talk about it's not well-deserved. It's well-earned. He earned that.
Yeah.
And the fact that, Cody, those things, you've been to all those stadiums with us over the years. The Rings of Honor, for the most part, are names of Pro Bowl and Hall of Fame players, general managers, ownership, coaches. That just tells you how wide. I mean, he's only the 6th play-by-play man to be inducted into a team's Ring of Honor of the 32. That's how rare that is.
I didn't know the number, but I figured it was pretty rare.
Yeah.
And he was just so grateful. You know, we were all so happy for him. He was just so grateful. And like you said, well-earned, and it was just a great day. Being down on the field, just standing behind him, it just felt like I was in a movie.
Sure.
Getting to watch him.
Seeing the pictures that the Titans put out and then some people on social media, it looked like that.
Yeah.
Like there was one shot I saw you out of just a little out of focus in the distance, and you were in mid-clap, and I could see this look on your face, this stoic look, like this is wild that this is happening.
So it was, of course, Mike just nails the speech, just keeps it simple, and just gets to the, you know, how grateful he is, which he truly is.
The fact that he dedicated that, though, to the fans because he never got to give them a proper goodbye, that's the most Mike Keith thing ever.
Yeah. Unselfish. And then the other thing that was going through my head, because, again, in the suite, I was thinking about you. You were on the Jumbotron with a great message. You know, and just seeing everybody in the suite, you know, Brad Willis, Philip Noel, Larry Stone, Jonathan Hutton, everybody who was up there, it just reminded me again. And then thinking about everybody in Knoxville, where Mike is now, just thinking about all the broadcasters across the state who kind of came out of the Mike Keith tree.
Absolutely.
You know, everybody talks about the coaching trees, the great coaches, and then this coach studied under that coach. All these broadcasters studied under Mike Keith. Mike helped all of them. Anytime they needed something, he was there. And so it was just this great moment to see all these people who he had kind of brought along and are doing well up there.
Mentorship is a very under-talked about thing with Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I both were mentored by him. Our own Lucas Panzica, who's now the game day host on Titans Radio, he's mentored Lucas since he was in high school. Big surprise. But you're right. There are touch points all over, not only the state of Tennessee, but probably other neighboring states where he's made that impression and took time to listen to someone and be a sounding board and give advice.
Yeah, I just call it the Mike Keith broadcasting tree.
That's it. That's exactly right. It is now halftime of Sideline Stories podcast with Cody Allison, the very first Titans sideline reporter for Titans Radio. In the second half, we will visit Cody's first game as sideline reporter on Titans Radio. Right now, though, this episode of Sideline Stories is brought to you by Cody Allison and Associates. Cody Allison and his team have been representing clients all across the Mid-South for over 25 years. Their team knows how to take on the big insurance companies. If your ERISA employee benefits have been denied, do not go that alone. You have someone in your corner, go to CodyAllison.com. All right, now the second half of Sideline Stories, episode 1. Let's take us back in the, as Taylor Zarzour would call it, the time machine.
Right.
September 12th, 1999, the first Titans regular season game against the Cincinnati Bengals. They were in the AFC Central Division. There were actually 6 teams in the division because they hadn't been reorganized and reshaped until 2002. It's your first game as sideline reporter. What do you remember about that day?
I just remember thinking, don't screw it up. I mean,
you were nervous though. You had to be.
Of course. I mean, I'm a nobody. I'm getting to be down there because I just kind of right place, right time. I mean, the dog and all that, and the spotter,
right.
and Mike's son being born was, I believe, the only game that he ever had to miss.
That's correct. That was in 98.
Right.
And that was their game at the Kingdome in Seattle.
Right. So he couldn't do. So I went down and interviewed the coordinators after that game. And that's how I got to do the sidelines the next year. Apparently, that went okay. I remember going down to talk to Greg Williams, and his first thing out of his mouth, it was a loss, right? Horrible, like a last-second loss. It was bad. Nobody was happy. And the first words out of Greg Williams' mouth were, "Has Mike had his son?" Not anything about the game.
How about that?
I always loved that. And then he gave me this great interview and, took it easy.
Oh, no, he can turn it on now.
Yeah, so
You're right.
He gave me everything I needed. It worked out, so I got to do the sidelines the next year.
How about that?
So
but
anyway,
this is it's the Titans, new unis, new name. The crux of the team had been built. The cornerstones were there in the Eddies and the Steves and the Franks and the Bruce Matthews, who was an Oiler. Mm-hmm. But now there's, under the name, image, likeness, there really was a complete overhaul of that, a brand new building that Nashville could call its own, Tennessee could call its own. And here we are. This is big time. Right.
It was just surreal. And I think, I was like a deer in the headlights when I walk out on the field. Like, I can't believe, is this a real microphone? I thought, they've given me a fake one. I'm not going to really get to do this. But, no, it was real. And just the whole, just listening, to Mike and Larry start everything off in my ear. And, and like, this is real. Here we go.
There is a snippet, a reel that we found a few years back, and I'd forgotten about this, and I think this was something for NFL Films when they would produce those highlights for every team, and you're outside of the stadium. It's a beautiful day for football in the Mid-South at Adelphia Coliseum.
Yes. Well, that was the miracle game.
Oh, it was, wasn't it?
Yes. So
it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the interesting thing, that was because that was the first playoff game.
Correct.
And so I was sitting up in the booth. Mike was down on the field recording something. Larry was with him.
Yeah.
And NFL Films comes bursting in the booth, and they're like, we need to get this old scene setter. Is there anybody here who's on air with the Titans? And I'm like, well, Mike's not here. Larry's not here. They said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm the sideline guy. I'm just up here. They're like, great. Give us a scene setter.
Come with us.
Turn around and go. So on the original, and Mike used to give me such a hard time about that. I felt so bad. I'm like, Mike, I couldn't help it. You were down on the field. So, yeah.
Of course he gave you a hard time about it, too.
Yeah, he had to. And I'm thinking, and of course at that time, we don't know it's going to be the Music City Miracle.
Yeah.
Right? And so I happened to do this, and it makes NFL Films. And again, story of my life, lucky, right place, right time. Didn't earn it. But it was great.
You're like me in that.
I'm like the Forrest Gump of radio.
But I say it all the time, though. I'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is really the case. That game, though, was wild. Mm-hmm. It was a seesaw affair back and forth. And if you'll remember this, so Jeff Blake, the former East Carolina Pirate, is one of the quarterbacks. and Akili Smith they had taken 3rd overall out of
Mhm.
Oregon. They had Scott Covington, the former Ohio State quarterback, as number 3.
Mhm.
All 3 of those guys ended up playing in that game
Nice memory.
because Jeff Blake got some kind of cramps in
Mhm.
his because it was pretty warm that day. I think it was 84
Right?
at kickoff,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then Jeff Blake was just throwing missiles. 36-35, and it was a Al Del Greco field goal right there with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes
That's
left.
it.
Pat Ryan doing Pat Ryan things with
Yeah.
Mike.
Never know what he's going to say. But yeah, it's like, wow, we won the first one. That's awesome.
The first of, and I think that was 278 or 9 in franchise history, but the first is the Titans.
Mhm.
But here we are doing this podcast, and there's this video element to it. We were talking about this before we ever started. So it brought to mind this question. What do you believe has changed about sideline reporting since you did it?
What's interesting, I mean, still you're going after the same kind of stories,
Yeah.
right? Same kind of information, but it's interesting. You'll remember we first started doing this, a lot of the stadiums weren't wired for these mics, and the transmission of, I mean, of course we could get it on, but there were parts of the field that you would break up. We always had to test every part of the
Dead zone.
field.
Yeah.
Yeah, to find all the dead zones. There were times when we would be somewhere. I remember Kansas City, in their older stadium at the time. It was like if you had a report, they're like, "We're going to go to Cody." I would have to sprint to one of my spots so that could get a signal. And I think the stadiums now are wired for that. The equipment's gotten better. It's all that stuff. But with social media out there, it's interesting because you're having to pay attention to that. And then, what is the other sideline reporter reporting? Because they're tweeting it out too, or whatever. I think that's X now, but anyway.
It is X.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Tweet,
yeah,
I still say
that's
tweet.
still called Twitter too.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, information is flowing a lot different. So those are just some of the things. But with the social media, I mean, it's a lot harder, I would think, to do it now
You're multitasking
than when I did it.
because you got a clipboard, notes, whatever.
Yeah.
And Mike always had a sheet prepped and a folder prepped for you so
Yeah.
that you had rosters, numbers, the whole thing. But you were intently watching what is taking place and then the interactions with players and coaches on the sideline as it pertains to an injury or what the vibe's like or whatever.
Right.
I think it's interesting because television sideline reporters have always had a little bit more access because it's a visual medium.
Right.
I find it interesting, and for everybody watching and listening to this podcast, behind the curtain, if you hadn't figured it out on like Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night football, when they do those interviews with head coaches, and it looks like it's in game, they've taped those just prior to them coming out for the third quarter, but it still has that effect. But I think it's interesting with the way that they've negotiated television contracts and those things, what they're allowed to do now. Because you can see it's painstaking. Those coaches hate it.
Oh, yeah.
They absolutely.
They hate
it's
it.
like the walk-off when you're down by 20
Right.
at halftime. It's like, we got to quit turning over the damn ball. Get out of my face.
I mean, you're watching the same game I am.
Right. What do you mean, what happened?
The only time we could interview players during a game would be like preseason after they'd been pulled.
The old fourth quarter filler.
Like Jake Locker. He's played the first 2 quarters. He's out. You get him at the beginning of the fourth. That was the only time you could do. And it's preseason too, right? So, yeah, I mean, all that's way different. I remember some games I'm sure they're running a delay. We didn't have a delay on early on from the sideline at least. And
we still don't have a delay.
okay. So
Those parabolic mics and your mics would pick up some conversation.
Don't point it toward the coach's bench. You might pick up an F-bomb.
That's it.
That was the thing. So, but I remember being down there and I'm interviewing Javon Curse live on the field after the game. It was the player of the game interview.
Yep.
And I get ready to interview him. All of a sudden, somebody comes behind me, grabs my microphone, and starts to interview Javon. And I'm just shocked. I'm like, I look over because it came from behind me. It was Chad Ochocinco Johnson. Grabs my mic. We're live. Larry's screaming in my ear. He's like, get that microphone back. I'm like, well, first of all, it's Chad Johnson. But second of all, I can't even talk to Larry because the only way I can talk to him is through my mic. And he's got the mic. And I'm just like, oh, gosh, how big's this fine going to be? It's Chad Johnson. And his first question to Javon was, what was it like to play against the great Chad Johnson today?
Of course, that was the first question.
Javon immediately, Javon's a great guy. He starts cracking up. He gives this great answer. And then Chad asked him a follow-up question, which was actually a really good question. And he gave a great answer, Javon did. And then he handed my microphone back and said, have a great rest of your interview. And I asked 2 more questions, stunned. And Javon and I were laughing, and that's how that went down. But that was live.
And see, again, this is why Sideline Stories with Cody Allison exists, because I had forgotten about that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like that doesn't happen as much now. I think it was more of the Wild Wild West back then.
Well, it was, and it was Chad Johnson. There haven't been too many Chad Johnsons.
No, there have been very flamboyant players in the league, but they're once in a 10, 15, 20 years down the pike kind of deal. And he was one of them for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wayback Machine.
Man, this is so fun, and I cannot wait to get into this stuff further. We're going to stop this one here. What I want you to do is like, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for Sideline Stories with Cody Allison, the first sideline reporter of Titans Radio. And, of course, they live on titansradio.com, 1045thezone.com. But this has been a great start to this. We're going to continue, and I want you to subscribe and check it out for yourself. For Cody Allison, I'm Rhett Bryan. This is Sideline Stories with Cody Allison, the first sideline reporter for Titans Radio.